Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this 1 hour round coaching, and I'm very happy that all of you were able to make it today. It's a session that I myself have been very excited about bringing to all of us here in India. So I'm Nikhil. I lead the organization called MindWise, and this session today is in partnership between MindWise and Transcend, and Craig joins us from Hong Kong, from Transcend for this. My association with the Transcend actually goes back to 2 to 3 years from now. And what really clicked for me well was that when we looked at this whole space of helping people make behavioral change through interventions of coaching, interventions of mentoring, and the whole space, the way they approached it in a holistic way, that was something which I found really equips people with all the tools and importantly, the mindsets that they might require to make a change for the coaches. And in my interactions with them, the whole presence that they bring, the whole deep thought process and reflection that they bring to this space has been truly a learning for me. Craig, can you just take us to the next slide? So yeah, that's a little bit about Transcend. The key part that I really was grateful for was not only do they help individuals and organizations adapt, but the way they have adapted their techniques, their methodologies, and even themselves to be able to be in service of the space of coaching, that's been truly inspirational. And my own association with Craig actually has been twofold. There have been scenarios where I have been in the role of the one helping him work through his internal space in mindfulness. And when it came to my learning the whole coaching space, Craig has been the guide and facilitator for that. But most importantly, the part that I really experienced was his sheer presence and his large heart in terms of just giving for people's benefits. With that, I will pass it over to Craig and put all of you in his good hands for the rest of the evening. Over to you, Craig.
Thanks, Nikhil, and thanks for joining us this evening from India. We appreciate it. Know that it's sort of the end of the workday. Some of you are, just connecting before you leave the office, or likely beginning your commutes. Who knows how long that takes. So yeah, there's a little bit about me. We developed this organization in 2007, and we've been pioneers in the region trying to develop Asian-based data, Asian-based coach training, and certainly developing this organization from the Hong Kong space was a whole idea around just this crazy, busy, driving culture where people need to develop different behaviors became the foundation for us. So we've done a lot of different stuff around this. I won't spend too much time talking about that. Delighted, actually, Nikhil was a bit humble about it. He was my mindfulness instructor as I was deepening my practice. So I certainly appreciated his work with me for about a year in that space. So that was good. So we've done a lot of work in the region. We're the first and only, as we know, a fully accredited organization to offer both European Quality Awarded from the EMCC and ICF ACTP training. I've been, one of my roles in the organization is to ensure that we meet the standards of these organizations and continue to do that. And that's a commitment we have to, we always say, meet and exceed the standards of the organizations that accredit. So we have a very strong focus on developing high quality professional coaches. That's a big part of what we really care about. We do a lot of different things. So certainly as you're thinking about this in your context, if you want to be coached, if you're interested in becoming a coach, or you want to develop your organization with emotional intelligence, team coaching, coaching skills, then reach out to Nikhil or reach out to us. and we'll work that through. Certainly, any contact to us, we would work through Nikhil anyways. So feel free to connect with him directly, and we work very closely in that region. And we do have some upcoming programs, so we won't be shy about that at all. We have definitely an online intake in July. We had planned a number of live programs in India this year. Unfortunately, we weren't able to travel. I was denied a visa a week before a program was scheduled to happen because I happened to be in China on the wrong day in January. So yeah, we're committed to build our business and organization in India, working closely with Nikhil and continuing to deliver with the highest standards. Us, like many organizations, are doing a lot more stuff online, which is proving to be different and valuable. We've worked hard to adapt our content so there's no shift in quality at all, but definitely there's a shift in context. And there's a special for Indian participants, so please contact Nikhil. His information was there. But let's begin just by talking about a little bit about what is coaching. So one of the ways to get this in your mind is to understand what coaching is not. And I would invite you at this time, if at any time, if you have a question, just type it into the chat. We've given permission for you to chat. And Nikhil's going to be watching that, and Mia, our producer. And we'll take breaks, in the midst of the content to answer those questions. We're happy to have some level of interaction with you. And there'll be a longer time for question and answer at the end. So when you look at this map, this cluster of circles, you see leading, consulting, training, mentoring, counseling, and managing. And we would say coaching is none of those things. Right? So coaching is not that. And one of the primary differences is that when someone is your leader or leads you, they have the vision, they have the direction as an organizational leader. When someone's a manager, very often we ask, what do managers do anyways? Well, what managers actually do is make sure that the resources needed are applied in the way to achieve the outcomes of an organization. So managers really are working with human time, budgets, physical resources to make sure that the results happen. Counselors give us empathy and diagnostics and recommendations for growth. Mentors give us advice from a position of expertise. Trainers help us to transfer our skills and knowledge, or their skills and knowledge, to us. And consultants give us expertise from a subject matter perspective. So if you listen carefully to what I said there, you'll notice that in each one of those relationships, we're giving something to you as a client. Coaching is the only relationship that really cultivates a true partnership. Coaching is not about what I give to you. Coaching is about us partnering together to activate the resources that you have to help you activate your potential, achieve what you want, and learn how to create the conditions under which you're successful. So we would say that coaching, you can use coaching skills in any of these areas. Coaching is a distinct relationship. It's different. So we spend a lot of time in our coach training helping coaches to become grounded in who they are and what they're doing when they're coaching. And again, if you have questions, please feel free to ask them at any time, and we'll answer them when we can. So the world of coaching, just to give you a perspective on this, just quickly, the idea that here's some of the ways that coaching is applied in organizations. And again, we're not exactly sure why all of you are here and what you're looking to gain. But if you're looking for a career in coaching, then here's some of the applications that coaching is currently doing, and there's growth in every one of these areas globally. So one-on-one coaching, individual, that's what a lot of us think about. Group coaching is helping a number of individuals with the same or similar agenda move toward that. But they're not a team. There are individuals that are trying to grow as leaders. They're trying to develop their skills as a coach. They're trying to improve their sales skills, whatever that might be. Coaches help them to move in that direction. And then team coaching is probably the fastest growing part of that. I'm proud to be part of the Global Team Coaching Institute faculty. We're working closely with Professor David Clutterbuck in developing his brand of coach training in Asia. And this means that the team is a group of people that have some interdependence, that we have to achieve something that requires all of us to work together. We're a group, that's not really necessary. So this is coaching leaders of teams, helping them become team literate, a huge issue right now. And then developing teams themselves by coaching teams to become high-performing teams. We also work with coaching supervision. There's a certification of coach education, and it's key to make sure you have a certified educational pathway. And then there's coaching skills training, which is kind of the entry into coaching, and something that's widely applied in organizations. And I would just say that from our experience, all of these are both organizational, so individuals within companies, internal training is needed, but also external training as well. So here's some ideas about coach training. So what we look at all the organizations that define what coaching is all about, with a primary focus on the EMCC and the ICF. And we see some common factors that emerge in their definition. So there is this client-focused idea. And this is actually a really hard concept to get across to people. Partnering, helping people to create their own choice and activate their own resources. And this is a big shift for anyone who's learning to coach in a skillful way. This is one of the big challenges for people. But developing a true partnering mindset and also helping our clients to experience that. In any definition of coaching, there's always something about the quality of thinking being shifted. So this is about thought-provoking, this is about being creative, alternative points of view, considering things from a different perspective. I and Tony Dickel, our chairman and CEO, we did a presentation at the European Mentoring Coaching Council Global Conference yesterday, which was an online event as opposed to being live in Paris. And we talked about transforming bias through coaching and mentoring, and really looked at alternative ways of seeing what's happening as a key way to people to begin to shift their bias. And then coaching is always relational and conversational, and coaches need to develop some key skills in this area. And then it's always potential focused. It's future based. It's about improving. It's about developing. It's about maximizing. Coaching is always about this language, which is really key. And then as transformation and transcends definition, we really have this point of view that we see the way we do this is with strong focus on helping clients to be clear on their goals. And we have a rigorous sort of process that we train to help people to do that. And then we want to help them to remain present with what they need to be attentive to in order to make optimal moment-by-moment choices which lead towards these goals. And that's an absolute, kind of really key, and it's where we integrate mindfulness into our coaching practice. This idea of helping people in moments of choice. And one of the points of view that we have that is a bit unique is we have this idea that what's really happening in coaching is we're helping people to become more resourceful in moments of choice so that they can choose to act in ways in service of their goals. So that's a real sort of a different perspective on coaching. So let's begin to explore this through this idea of partnership.
Craig, there is a question around this.
Okay, thank you, Nikhil.
Anu is saying that coaching seems very similar to non-directive counseling, as per the definition and characteristics you've mentioned. Could you clarify the difference?
I'll try to be careful as I wade into this with, not understanding exactly what the knowledge might be of that particular dimension of non-directive counseling. So one of the key differences between coaching and counseling is even a non-directive or a directive counseling perspective, part of the role of the counselor is to really help identify what might be happening with our clients in terms of a disorder, in terms of a challenge, in terms of something that needs to be shifted. So in coaching, we're not diagnosing, so that's a key differentiator. And then I would say that when it comes to non-directive counseling, that some key differences would be the focus on this idea of creating a well-formed goal. So this outcome-based focus of coaching, or helping clients develop clarity on what they're moving towards. And then the other aspect of coaching, which is really key, is that coaching is about helping functional people make progress towards what's meaningful and important to them in terms of goals. And counseling is designed to really help heal people that are dysfunctional in some way, usually psycho-emotionally, to heal so that they're functional enough to begin to achieve goals. So the goal of the intervention is a key differentiator, and then also the non-diagnostic nature of coaching, and then this strong future-based focus. Very often, any counseling intervention is about helping people to become more functional in the present so that they can develop a level of functionality that enables them to move to the future. So when we train, and we train a number of counselors to coach, very often that's a key differentiator for them. Counselors come to us for coach training because they want to develop skills. Once their client is healthy, how do they help them move? So I hope that answers your question. So some of the key differentiators. First is this partnering idea where we're equal with our clients. And this is hard in a lot of cultures. It's hard for me as my hair gets grayer and my experience gets more. People tend to say, oh, Craig, you're this or that. Whereas coaching is about the skill of the coach and creating as equal as possible partnership and helping clients to really strongly develop their own ways. I love the French language around coaching. The French language, the word for coaching in France is accompagnement, which means I'm someone who accompanies you on your journey. So this whole aspect of partnering is key and a big change for leaders and coaches. The second dimension of coaching to really just dig a little bit more is into the quality of thinking. And one of my favorite ways to talk about coaching to executives in organizations is this whole idea of improving the quality of your thinking. So one of the outcomes of coaching is helping people develop a higher level of thinking when it comes to decision making, when it comes to how they face challenges, how they think about themselves, how they think about others, how they think about the way the world is changing. A skillful coach will be able to help you enhance the quality of your thinking. And then finally, It's focused on potential, this idea of what you can be as opposed to what you are. It's about so much, a really skillful coach has an inspirational way of being where they're connecting with the potential that you don't even know you have and helping you to activate that and bring that into your relationships, workplace, your decision making, how you make a living, your habits, your mindsets. And it's a big part of where we are in the journey as coaches, is this focus on what could be. Now, our work in Transcend is really strongly grounded in neuroscience. We work quite hard to make sure that we're up to date on what's happening with research. In the last few years, there's been a large growth in the research that's coach specific. But of course, as a mindfulness organization, we also are dealing with the research around mindfulness and looking at psychology as well, and really adapting the research or adapting our processes based on the research. And there's just so much that reveals to us that the brain is incredibly plastic, that it changes, that it grows, that there's so much potential there. So part of what we do is really to focus on that and help people to activate. When it comes to coaching, if you want to really understand it, you need to begin to understand that coaching is really a spectrum. So we have here our spectrum, which we created, where we talk about skills, performance, development, and transformation. So when you think of, sports coaching in India, maybe cricket or football, the sports that you love, coaching is really about, at the skill level, is about helping you develop the skills that you want to have. It's a really powerful part of coaching. And it's, again, all of this is coaching. None is better than anything else. It's all a part of the framework of coaching. But a large part of what people think about in traditional coaching is about helping people to develop skills. So this could be delegation. This could be learning to trust other people. It could be sales skills. It could be managing my attention skills. There's a number of skills that could be developed. But the coach, in many ways, helps people develop the skills that they need in order to be effective. Layer 2 of this is performance. Once you have a skill, how do you now improve the performance of that skill? So you're beginning to hit your sales targets. How do you do that more consistently? How do you do that more expansively? How do you communicate well? You make a presentation to a small group of people quite effectively. How do you improve your performance as you do that with a larger group? So this is the ways that we shift performance and help people to develop more and more performance as a coach. So how do you extend, apply, create, become more skillful in different contexts, go larger with your performance? And all of that is the domain of what we call traditional coaching. And a lot of the coaching, in fact, probably most of the coaching that's done globally is in the realm of skill and performance coaching. Moving beyond that, we enter the realms of developmental transformational coaching. There's so much more about mindsets than skill sets. So developmental coaching is developing competency. So I might be able to communicate in a presentation. I might be able to communicate in order to delegate. Development of competency would be, how do I become a skillful communicator? Be known as someone skillful in communication. And then the transformational domain is so much more beyond that, which really is like making changes in the way we make sense of the world, how we find and make meaning from what we're encountering in the world. So our coach training system develops skills at every part of the spectrum, because you need to be skillful at every part of the spectrum to work with clients. doesn't mean that you have to focus on transformational coaching. You could choose to focus on skills, but having the knowledge of the transformational coaching perspectives and processes will enhance your ability to be more skillful in your work with people and developing skills. And at the same as people want to make transformations, they need to develop skills and improve performance. So it's all required. So let me maybe just pause there, because that sort of closes the first section, which is really about what is coaching and how is it different from other things. So, and also giving you some of our perspective on coaches. So before I shift into the emotional intelligence end of things, as if you have questions, please type it into the chat, and Nikhil can bring my attention to it. Or if you want to ask a question live, then you can raise your hand and we can notice that as well. I can't see all of you based on the view that I have, so I don't really know what's happening. But if you have a question, please, let's take a minute just to answer that. And I don't see anything coming in at this moment, and that's all right. I'll just begin to shift with how we integrate and work with emotional intelligence and coaching. And if something comes up, Nikhil, please just interrupt me as you desire. I'm happy to be interrupted. So one of the areas that we focus on as an organization is how we work with emotional intelligence and coaching. So there's a number of sort of specializations that we develop, and emotional intelligence is one of them. We also work with integrating mindfulness-based approaches into coaching, and we're a pioneer in that particular space. Today we'll focus on how do we work with emotional intelligence and begin to help you to understand how that might look in a coaching context. So what you have in front of you now is a set of emotional intelligence competencies. Now, we are connected deeply with an organization called Genos International, which has done significant research into emotional intelligence, and I'm a master trainer of emotional intelligence practitioners, and it's part of the offering that we bring to corporates and individuals. So they have done this extensive study into emotional intelligence and have really come up with 6 competencies that they feel, and we would agree, capture the essence of developing emotional intelligence. And one of the key things that Genos did that a lot of organizations didn't do was, instead of looking at emotional intelligence as a fixed quantity, as something you have or don't have, they looked at emotional intelligence as a set of skills that could be developed.
Yes, good.
Someone is just not muted. And they developed a set of competencies that reflect that holistically. Work that's also been validated and connected with through the emotional intelligence symposiums, and certainly similar and to the work that leaders in emotional intelligence are doing globally. But seeing that these 6 competencies are key to people being effective in emotional intelligence, which has been through research connected with career trajectory, longevity, happiness, well-being, retention in organizations, sales success. There's just a tremendous amount of research that's out there that says emotional intelligence is something we all need. And the more we have, the better the quality of our relationships, the quality of our work, and our own mental health and well-being. So self-awareness is about knowing what's happening with us in the emotional field. Others awareness is about being aware of what's happening with others and being able to empathize as appropriate with what's going on with them. Authenticity is all about the domain of communication. This is about how genuine we are, how much what we say matches up with what we're saying with our body, with our emotions. And then emotional reasoning is really about how skillfully we use the data from our emotions in decision making in terms of timing, communication, etc. So an example of that would be low morale within an organization is probably the wrong time to take a change into that organization that's going to require a lot of discretionary effort, because people have a low morale, they're less energetic, they're just not going to be able to bring the level of discretionary effort that's needed. So how do we help people? How do we increase morale before we bring change? Or how do we acknowledge that something's gone wrong and then bring change that way? Self-management has dimensions, a lot of dimensions. So one dimension is self-control in the moment. The other is self-management of just the emotional life. How do you manage the emotional climate of your life? And how do you keep yourself healthy emotionally? And then finally, inspiring others or performance or helping others to perform effectively is about the impact of our behavior on others. So this is about being aware of how our behavior impacts others and being skillful. So that's EI. So how does that connect with skillful coaching? So first of all, a good coach needs to be very skillful at building trust and psychological safety, creating the environment where people can explore what they're thinking, what they're feeling, what they've always thought, what they've always felt, and creating that environment where clients are comfortable and capable. Well-formed goals. This is the space, again, where we have a unique process around. We have a strong point of view that goals that aren't rooted in our emotion are hard for people to keep in their mind in moments of choice. So there's a real key strength to helping people create well-formed goals that are connected emotionally. So a skillful coach needs to have the emotional intelligence to be able to help clients navigate their own emotional array until they can find out that they're really connected with and committed to that goal. And as an organization, we have a strong focus on developing actionable self-awareness. So this is awareness that we can take action on and want to take action on. So if I'm aware that I intimidate people, then that may not be actionable, because it just means I do that. Actionable self-awareness is translating that knowledge into something that enables me to understand how I feel, how I think, how my way of being impacts other people, and helps me create pathways to change. And then as we have this strong focus on moments of choice, then a big part of emotional intelligence integrated into coaching, and even mindfulness is integrated into this space quite strongly, is that in moments of choice, how do I manage myself? How do I skillfully navigate what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, what you're making me think, what you're making me feel, in a way that helps me to keep my goal in mind so that I take action that leads to the outcomes I want rather than the outcomes I don't want. And finally, at the depths of self-transformation, at the deep end of the spectrum, of the coaching spectrum, we help clients to develop what we would call emotional balance, which is this just ability to feel emotions and not be our emotions. So it's the difference between I feel angry and I am angry, and helping clients to notice that, sit with that, and work with it as they seek to move toward their goals. So again, let me just pause and happily take the opportunity for you to ask questions. And the next thing would be to look at some possible cases of how we work with clients and the kinds of ways that occurs. And then taking questions and answers in general. So if you have anything now, I'd be happy to answer that. Just enter your question in the chat or raise your hand, and we'll notice that. And we can then have you just unmute yourself and ask that question. So anything coming up for you? All right, well then I'll move along as we move. So this is a reminder that we have some training programs that are emerging, and there's an online program which has times that are favorable for India right now. We can't travel for quite a while, so we're happy to offer that. So again, please contact Nikhil if you want to do that, and he'll reply and we'll connect with you. So this is coaching skills, team coaching, EI, mindfulness-based coaching, whatever you'd like. And with that, I'd be happy to take some questions and answers. And also, if there are none, then I'm prepared to share examples of how we integrated emotional intelligence and mindfulness, into a coaching process with a client. So if there are no questions, I'll share an example. And then maybe there'll be some questions after that. So I don't notice any questions coming in. Please feel free to ask away as you do. We had one question from Anu, and then it appears none after that. So maybe let me share an example of how we worked with a client around emotional intelligence in order to help them to be more effective in their roles. So one of the clients that I worked with is someone who approached me after knowing me for about 4 years. And what was said to me by him was, I've been watching you for the last few years, and I think I can trust you to help me with this. I've been receiving feedback for the last 8 years in my role about a certain behavior that he was manifesting. And it was creating problems for him in his career trajectory and his own stress, and certainly creating some dissension among his team. It was really behavior around being reactive, overly emotional. So what happened is that over the course of a year, I worked with him to help him begin to deal with this feedback. Now, he resisted it for 8 years. He'd received the feedback every year in his review, but he hadn't dealt with it. But he felt ready. He felt like he trusted me. So I was, first of all, thankful that he had this high level of trust. And secondly, I felt really responsible to be skillful, um, to be able to help him make progress. So what we began to do was do a process that we train in our coaching, which I would simply call deconstructing emotional episodes, to help him discover where he could have done something differently than he did. So if I can even get you to imagine yourself the last time you reacted in a way that you wish you wouldn't have, whether you were overly enthusiastic or angry or frustrated or acting in a way that was totally outside of your character. Basically, I helped him to deconstruct those moments and begin to very non-judgmentally say, so that's what happened. What happened before that? What were you feeling? Where were you feeling it? What were you thinking? What were you feeling as you thought that? And basically work backwards in time in the emotional dimension to help him figure out where he could have done something different. And through that process, what happened with this particular individual was that he actually came back to the point where the way he thought about other people in general, the expectations that he put on them, created this sort of dimension of frustration for him. So he was predisposed to frustration. And as he began to not lower his expectations, but just simply change his expectations and take a much more curious approach, and also pay attention to his, what I call his emotional climate of his life. As he did this, he began to create a different way of being with his direct reports, with the clients he worked with, and over the course of a year, we began to see his feedback change substantially. So that's an example of how, through coaching, we were able to make a shift. And Maya has made a comment that's brilliant. Not lower, but change expectations. Definitely. Yeah, interesting frame. Yeah. That was his and what he eventually created was an intention. Here's how I want to think about myself and others. And that became for him like sort of a daily thing that he was sort of reminding himself of. And whenever he noticed the triggers happening, he would begin to remember these key words that we created together, partnered with. And then he started to think, what am I expecting from this person? And not lower, but shift. What's possible for this individual in this context? And that curiosity meant he became much more developmental. So yeah, it was quite an interesting journey. All right, thank you. So another question has come. Nikhil, you want to share that and then I'll answer it.
Yes, the question is from Maya again. How would you work on the self-awareness becoming a habit for the coachee?
Okay. Well, I would say the first way we would work on it would be helping self-awareness becoming a habit for the coach. So ideally, as a coach, we would become increasingly self-aware. And that journey in itself will make us more compassionate and empathetic to our client's journey. And then essentially what we're doing is really helping our clients think about what's happening with them in a moment of choice. So ideal scenario for us as a coach in our methodology is the client leaves a session, and we call them coaching clients, not coachees, because coachees is a diminutive. I'm the coach, you're my coachee. We call them coaching clients, and that creates this equality. So we would say that, like, ideally, the coaching client leaves the session, and in the 3 weeks in between sessions, or 2 weeks, or whatever the time frame is, they fail miserably to do what they wanted to do, except once they actually did it. So what we would want to do is now deconstruct their success and help them to find out, in that one time they did what they wanted to do, what was happening with them, and really help them to explore the context where they were able to do what they wanted to do, as opposed to what they didn't want to do. If we explore all the times they failed, we're just reinforcing all the neural pathways related to failure. But we want to grab that one moment where they were successful, they did the right thing, they followed through on their goal, and we want to explore that because, one, we're creating neural pathways related to success, and two, we're learning what are the conditions under which you actually do what you want to do, where you actually show up in your best self. So part of the self-awareness is really just helping clients to learn the conditions under which they're successful. And we do this by repetition, by exploring, by challenging, and certainly by deconstructing their successes. And if they have no successes, then helping them to learn from their failures, what they'd like to be different. So thank you for the question, Maya. Anything else coming up for you as it comes to questions? Certainly, I'll go back to this slide just to pause so you can catch Nikhil's address if you want to look at that.
Craig, we do have another question. This is from Clint.
Right.
What if the coaching client's problem is the same as the one you are facing? This is one of my favorites.
Thank you, Clint. Very good question. Not that the other questions weren't good. This is always a funny one, actually. My feeling is always, well, then if you're unskillful as a coach, you will become entangled in that story, and something will happen, what we call parallel process, or psychological terminology, parallel process. It is occurring, and there might be some transference and all kinds of stuff happening. But if you're a skillful coach, then to me, if I'm coaching Nikhil and he's having the same problem I'm having, that my challenge to our coaches is, in that context, I would say, what's the question you don't want someone to ask you? And then ask that question. So, I mean, the way I would say I challenge coaches to do is learn from the bravery of your client how to deal with your own stuff. So challenge, probe, and recognize that you have that connection, but leverage that to ask a better quality of question. And often the better quality of question is, what do I not want to be asked about procrastination? You know, what do I not want to be asked about why I'm not in a happy relationship? What do I not want to be asked about my performance at work? And ask that question. And then your client, again, trust your client to be able to come up with the answer. I think the worst thing we can do is limit them with our own cowardice, limit them with our own patterns of thinking about things, but to be curious So if you're struggling with the same thing I am, I'm curious as to what flavor of it you have that's different than what I have. And I'm curious to find out how you would respond to a question I don't want to be asked. And I'm curious to find out what kinds of steps you might come up with to solve that. And then, of course, if I'm really a professional, skillful coach, I would take energy and bring it to my mentor coach or my coaching supervisor and say, okay, I was coaching my client and they were dealing with the same issue that I was dealing with, and here's what happened with me. And allow my supervisor to help me grow in that context.
Craig,
And I
Clint
can
follows
see,
up.
yeah, thanks.
Asking that, would that mean that you should necessarily see movement as well in yourself as a coach?
Oh, yeah. As a coach, we can't take people where we haven't been. So, I mean, here's the deal. I mean, you need to deal with your own stuff. To be a really skillful coach, you need to deal with all the messes of your life. And allow the coaching process to become a way for you to move successfly through those. So yeah, I would say definitely that's an absolute key. And as I, if you look at my profile, I do a lot of work as a mentor, a lot of work as a supervisor. So a lot of my work with coaches is what's coming up for them as things are changing for their client. And our own coach training pathway is designed as a transformational pathway. We just say, you need to change. If you really want to help people, then part of the journey that we'll take you on is a transformational journey where you will develop and move and shift and change and hopefully develop an appetite for that. Because I guess I would say if there's one thing that characterizes a highly skillful coach is a learning mindset. Just this curiosity, this development. If you're interested in
here as well.
Sorry?
May I lean in here as well? Love to share a
Thank
bit
you,
of my
Nikhil.
experience around this. And this for me goes back and touches upon Maya's original question as well of how do you work on the self-awareness piece? And then again, Clint's question now, does the coach himself go through a shift? What I experienced working through the approach that Transcend takes was we were not being enabled to develop the skills of being a coach, but really being able to realize that if we are going to be the mirrors for whatever is happening and coming for the coaching client, it's our responsibility to be constantly shining that mirror so that we can do our intention and our contract as well as we should, as a trust that's been given into us. So forever, like you rightfully said, a coach cannot take the coaching client where he himself has not been. So that responsibility made sure that one is always working on themselves. And through the learning process, you had enough and more tools that you could be applying on your own journey as well.
Thanks, Nikhil. Yeah, it's a big part of it, actually. I think we would say this, like, you can learn the skills of a coach, but in order to be a truly skillful coach, you need to become a coach. So we would say it's a way of being shift that's required that happens as we learn skills, as opposed to thinking of something that happens outside of that. Because if you think back to emotional intelligence, even like we create this psychological safety. So it's the environment that we create when we're with our clients that enables them to have the freedom, the courage, the trust to be able to explore dimensions of their potential that they hadn't even been aware of or willing to think about. So our way of being creates the context where our clients can explore and grow. So I think that's really, really key. All right. Well, if there's no more questions, then certainly we would say please be in touch with Nikhil. He's a great partner, and we're so privileged to be in relationship with him. And certainly I've been cultivating this connection for a few years. Maybe one more question.
Sorry to interrupt. We have a question from Rashmi.
Yeah.
When we do performance coaching, is it okay to contribute to clients' solution thinking process?
So I'll translate that question into maybe simpler words. Can we give advice? So generally in coaching, this is, certainly frowned upon and not really acceptable. I would say that anything that is over-helping, anything that shifts that partnership relationship, we need to be aware of and careful with. And we would say that we work with you to do what we would call non-invasive interventions with clients. And there's some ways we can do it in a truly partnership way. But if you can contribute in a way that's in partnership, then it's appropriate. So some ways to think about that, Rashmi, is we would say that, and let me just illustrate with my hand actually is the best way. So if I say, you should try this, that's invasive. But if I say, some people found this helpful, that's in the middle. Some of my clients find things like this useful. What do you find useful is non-invasive contribution to the client's thinking process. But saying, have you thought about, have you ever considered, have you ever tried, of course, is invasive. So one of the ways to look at that is as you're saying it, are you pointing or are you placing? If you're pointing, it's invasive, directive, and not conducive to partnership. If you're placing and inviting your client to explore it, then that's much more of a partnership way of thinking. Okay. Well, I think our time has arrived.
On the dot.
On the dot at 9 o'clock. So in Hong Kong, it's 9 p.m. It's earlier for you, of course. It's 6:30, I believe. So I would just say on behalf of us, Transcend in Hong Kong, which is more than me, thank you so much for attending. And Nikhil, you want to close? And I'm happy to have you do that.
Thanks, Craig. And I'd like to thank you not just for helping set this up out of a super busy and crazy schedule, much late for you, but also for so patiently clarifying a lot of the questions that some of us had. Thank you all for joining us, and you do have our contact details. Reach out to me, reach out to Transcend, you have their details as well. And in any which way that we can be of service to you through our offerings, more than happy to have a conversation around that. Bye.
Thank you so much. Hopefully we'll see you live in India or online, or some combination of the above. So see you soon.